Good morning. I've got two hands to go through. These were hands that I played yesterday, last night. In both of the hands, I ended up raising pre-flop. So hand number one, I get pocket kings. This is a 10 NL table. It's full ring, so all 9 players. We get one limp, and then I come in with a raise for big bets. Villain 14, he is loose, loose passive. So I have his note here that he buys in for short, across all limits that I've seen him play. So at this 10 NL, he buys in for 40 big blinds. So, someone like that, I'm gonna say they don't really know how to play or play well. Uh, Usually they're going to be loose. Usually they're going to call off too wide, and it's like they're calling because they don't want to be bluffed. So this limper, uh, he does have 12% raising range with 4% three betting range, uh, but I don't think we're going to see any big hands in this range right now. When we look at his stats across position, he doesn't seem to be positionally aware. Maybe the raise first in, more likely to raise first in from the button than he is in early or mid position. But his VPIP doesn't really seem to adjust it much. So let's get something. I think I'm not sure if he plays all of his off-suited aces. Uh, so we have limp and call to raise with all of those hands. We know he's playing suited aces, suited kings at least down to king 7. He's got his three gappers. He also has, you can see, 8-4 suited, 8-2 suited, 5-3 suited. I think those may be in the blinds. I don't know if we're going to include those or not. He has ace 10 suited, ace 5 off suit. He's got jack 8 off, and as well as your offsuit connectors. So I think what we're going to do is, at a minimum, have these as our offsuit hands, and then for his suited hands, I think we are going to take out some of these. Now, he still folds, um, so maybe he doesn't do all of those. That's at 38% right now, and I think that's a pretty good starting point. So against that limping range, we're going to be like way ahead at this point. I do expect him to likely call, and when this hand happened, I contemplated raising to 5 or 6 big blinds because I did expect him to call. I mean, if he's going to call with a wide range, why not just increase your bet size and get it in while we have such a large advantage on him? Uh, Everyone folds back to villain 14, who ends up calling. So we see a flop 10-7-5. I think that is actually a great flop for us. It's great for us because we've got the overpair. I think there's a lot of tens in his range that he's going to be able to call. Uh, and I think a lot of his suited offsuit hands, the middle ones, are willing to call flop and maybe the turn uh, with just one pair and possibly on a draw. So when we look at his stats, he's got a flop C bet 49, fold to C bet 49%, fold to turn C bet 36%, fold to river C bet 50%. So he's not crazy. He may call once, but if he doesn't have a pair, he's not going to call the turn. If he doesn't have a pair or a draw, he's not going to call the turn. So he checks, which I expect for basically his entire range. He does have donks flop 2 out of 69 times. Um, I don't know when he did that. Let's see if we can see any sort of. I don't think we have any position stats of where he would donk the flop, um, but it's pretty rare. Um, if he donks the flop, I'm expecting top pair type hand. That's it. So he checks. I think he's going to be checking with his entire range. So we can't really narrow anything down. Now, question is, we're going to c-bet. We're going to c-bet to build the pot because he's going to call with, a lot worse. What do we bet? I think we could go as high as a pot size bet, but I think a pot size bet might generate too many folds. Half pot I think half pot and 2/3 are going to likely generate the same number of calls. 3/4, maybe that's a good unknown. I did 2/3, expecting him to call it, even though kind of my go-to c-bet size is half pot. This time I sized up because I think he's going to be calling, and he did. So what is he going to call with? When we bet and he c-bets, I'm fully expecting him to call with all of his pairs. I fully expect him to call with his open-ended straight draw, and I think his gut shots will likely call. I don't know if overcards are going to call. That's kind of an unknown. Since he does fold, I'm going to say probably not. I think he would give up the old overcards, or if he calls, he'll call once and then fold them on the turn. So what we can do is we'll include him in here. That gives him a calling range of 74.5%. We're still way ahead of that. And we see a turn of 4 of hearts. So 4 of hearts now kind of gives us a slight problem because we can easily, I could see him having 6-8. I could see him 6-3's kind of maybe possible. I didn't include it in his range because I just don't know if he's going to call with these small, really small suited connectors, 1 and 2 gappers. But the nice thing is that it's going to give him another reason to call. So now I think any flush draws are going to be calling. So any of his flush draws are going to call. I think he'll still call with his open-ended straight draw. I think he's still going to call with any of these pairs. But I think his overcards now are just gonna fold. Do I think he's ever gonna raise? Maybe. I think if we see a raise, we're probably dealing with a straight, maybe a set, maybe 2 pair. I think we're gonna probably see those. His overpairs, jacks, queens, kings, and aces. I should have taken those out. I kind of expected him to raise those pre-flop. I think also ace queen. I don't think we don't really have his 2-bet range, so I don't think his overpairs are going to be in there anymore, because I think he would have raised pre-flop. So we've got this calling range here, and thus if he's going to call 73.5% of the time, as less than 20%, hey, this is favorable. This is favorable to us. So the question is, how much should we bet? So he does check. Not really surprised. And we're at the same dilemma. Do we bet small? Do we bet a half pot bet that he'll likely call with all of these hands, and maybe even a gut shot? Or should we size up and maybe get him to fold some other hands? I think if we bet the pot, he might fold out a weak pair. He might fold out middle pair. So he's calling top pair and pocket pair below top pair. Is that favorable to us? I mean, he's still calling with hands that we beat, and we're getting more money there. We're building a pot, and the other thing is that we consider as a stack size. So the pot's 22.1. If I bet the pot, he's going to have like a really small bet, really small call on the river. So if I'm going to bet pot, why not just shove it all in which case I think he's going to fold a lot of these hands. He'll probably call flush draw, maybe the open-ended straight draw, but I don't think he's going to be calling, anything less than top pair. So he, if I shove, I think maybe he's calling 48.6% at 20%, which I guess is fine. We have to work out the EV of that play. All right, so I chose, I believe, to do 2/3. kind of in the middle. Um, yep, it's about 2/3 pot. And with that 14, I thought that leaves 20 big blinds behind, which would be a little less than half size pot bet. And if he calls again, I'm kind of putting him on this calling range, which I'm ahead of right now, um, and he does call. So I like that. Now we're dealing with less than a half pot bet size here, which suggests that maybe I should have sized down, but or maybe I should have just kind of raised it and tried to get him to go all in. I didn't like the ace of spades at the time because I thought, oh crap, I could see him calling with ace 10, ace 5, ace 7, um, and now hitting two pair and beating him. And he checked, which is kind of what I expect. I don't really expect him to be betting straights or two pair in this situation. Now that is only 16.7% of his range. So we're questioning, what should we do now? Should we bet the 20 big blinds to get them all in, or should we check and see the showdown? So just against his entire range, we're at 83%. If we bet, what do we think he's going to call? I kind of think he might think I have the ace myself. So at the time, I thought, if I bet, not only is he going to call with all of his aces, but he's going to call. He's going to call with hands that beat me. So I don't think he's going to call with middle pair or weak pair anymore. I just don't. I think playing this guy, if he doesn't have an ace and the ace comes on the board, he'll tend to fold and give up. So I think he has a pair at this time. His two pairs unlikely with the ace. He could have top pair, like ace jack. But we're left with, if we bet, do we think he's going to call or not? I checked behind, which in retrospect, I think I probably should have bet, just because he had an opportunity to call with a middle pair. Because again, maybe he would, maybe he doesn't. But I took the safe way. Took two streets of value for it. He calls. He had 6-7. Did he have a 6-7 offsuit? Yeah, we had it in his range, and we had that as a weak pair. So if he calls with a weak pair, he's also calling with a middle pair and above and so forth. So we're at 80% equity at that point. All right, so that's hand number one. We had it in his range, which was pretty good. So let's close this out and get hand number two ready. All right, hand number two, also a 10 NL game. This is full ring game. I've got pocket eights here. We have one limper, and I raised to 4 big blinds. So unlike the previous hand, where the villain was going to be loose passive, and I have quite a few hands with him. I have quite a few hands with this player, but he's not nearly as loose passive. He's not, if I size this up, if I did 5 or 6 big blinds, he's going to be more likely to fold to that he's going to be more likely to fold to the bigger one than a smaller raise. He's not static when it comes to calling frequencies. So I just did my standard 4 big bet raise. What is villain 1? What is he playing? So I have 22-5. So 22% VPIP, 5% preflop raise. So definitely on the passive side. But we also see that he does seem to play position with his VPIP. He does seem to have some sort of raising frequency based on his position. So he's much more likely to raise first in from the button than he is in early position. And I think that means we're going to be dealing with a much tighter range for this player than we had for the last player. So his raise first in stat is 3% from early position. his VPIP from early position is 16%. So we're going to look at like a 16% range minus hands that we think he would open raise with. So this kind of comes down to, is he going to be doing it with suited aces? His raises, is he just going to limp with them? I will say that at 3%, he's probably raising something like that. That's at 2.6%. Maybe we can add jacks to that, but I think this is his early position raising range. So now from there, we're at 13% when we have all the suited aces, suited king, queen, jack. We're going to include king, queen off, ace, queen off, ace, jack off as his offsuits. I think maybe we can add king 10, queen 10, and possibly the suited gappers. I mean, that gets us to 16% right there. And I think we're going to stop here. I think this is going to be his range. Now, pocket eights, it's still a pair, and we're going to be favored. I mean, no big surprise. We do have a pair. So I like the raise. The question is, what's going to happen with everyone else behind us? So everyone else behind us is not, I'm going to say, is more closer to reg-like. So we do have loose players. They're going to see a lot of flops, but villain 4, his call, 2-bet pre-flop is only 15%. We've got 23% in the small blind, 14% in the big blind. The button has called 30%, but only out of 41 hands. So if we get called, I kind of expect that maybe the button would call. If anyone else calls, I'm going to figure they have a decent hand, not a great hand. I think they would raise. I mean, we're dealing with 3-bet range, 3%, 0%. He hasn't 3-bet. If this guy 3-bets, I think he's going to have a wider range, and he may be playing positional advantage in that case. We don't have to worry about it because they all folded, and it's back to villain 1, who then calls. So with that limping range, we raise. What hands is he going to call with? I think he's going to call with all of his pocket pairs. I think he will probably fold his suited 1-gappers and maybe king 10. I think we can leave those in there. We will leave all of the suited aces. So I think he folded out, maybe like 2% of the hands, so 14 out of 16%. So he was continuing with 87.5% of the hands, which is fine because, again, it makes his range a little bit stronger, but we're still going to be a favorite. All right, so we see a flop of 2 of hearts, 5 of spades, 7 clubs. Now, against that range, he's going to miss. He's going to miss a large chunk of the time. And we're going to be in pretty good shape. However, we do have to protect our equity because he has these bigger cards, these Broadway cards in his hand, along with our suited aces. We can't just check behind because any card 9 or higher has the potential to give villain 1 the lead in the hand. So when he checks, which I expect him to check, vast majority of his range, we need to bet to try to get him to fold those hands out so we can realize our equity. What does he do? He checks, and again, I'm not surprised. I've got over 1,000 hands. In 54 attempts, he has yet to dunk the flop into me. So now our question is, how much to bet? We are going to bet. Question is, how much to bet? His fold c-bets 47%, fold the turn c-bets 45%, fold the river c-bets 100%. So he is definitely passive, and he tends to call. Now, what is he going to call with? I think he's going to call with his pairs. I think he's going to call with some draw hands. And he may just call because he doesn't believe that I actually have a pair. So called 2 bets, called 3 bets in position. So he limps and calls raises with range of hands. So we can bet half pot. So the question is he going to call with the same frequency? A half pot bet versus, let's say, a larger pot size bet. Probably. He is going to be tighter. I think he's going to fold out a lot of the same hands. And a half pot bet is full pot bet's 9.5, so 95 cents versus, let's say, 48 cents. Is that going to be big difference? I don't know at the 10NL level if that's going to generate any more folds if I size up. I went 2/3 because I expected him to call at least once, and I thought with my position, any card lower than a 7, I'm going to be able to bet again, and he'll probably fold if none of his draws have completed. So I'm expecting him to bet, so I sized up. I didn't want to size up all the way up to pot because I don't want to have a much larger pot that I'm going to be firing a double barrel on, at what could be a potential bluff in that case, because that's it's kind of a mix of a bluff and value hand. We are delighted when his overcards fold. We bet 6.3 big blinds and he calls. So what is he going to call with? I think he's going to call with all of his pairs. I think he's going to call with his gut shots. I think he's going to call probably with his 2-card backdoor flush draws. We're going to leave that in because that's our overcards. And we've got gut shot plus overcards. We're going to throw those in. So 70.3%. I think he's going to call with those. I don't think he's going to call with all his overcards. We'll exclude the ones that don't have any sort of backdoor potential. So against that range, we're still at about 61%. Turn was a 9 of spades. That was not a super favorable card for me. However, we do block, some of the straights. So if he called with 7-6 or 5-6, we've got the 2 8s there that are going to block him from having a straight. He could have called with 9-8, and now he has top pair hand, which isn't the nicest thing for us. So we do kind of have to be a little bit cautious moving forward. Is that going to change our plan? Well, let's look at the hands that he has. So against his entire range at this point, we've got 65%. If I expect him to check, and then if we bet, I think he's going to be folding. I think he's still going to call it. He's going to call his flush draws, his open-ended straight draws, his gut shots. Maybe not. If he calls his gut shots, he's calling because he thinks I'm bluffing. And if he thinks I'm bluffing, then he's probably going to call all of his pairs, his overpair sets, 2 pairs, and so forth. So all of his weak pairs, so the 2s and the 5s, and better. So I think at this point he's going to be calling with 86% of the hands, and against that range, I'm still a favorite. So I think we should bet because he's going to fold all of the overcard flush draws that now missed, or the backdoor flush draws that now missed. Do we have to go as large? I don't know. I think if we bet pot, I think he may fold out some of his weaker pairs and maybe his middle pairs. So if we take those out, we're only at 51% if called. We're still a favorite, but still at 51%. I think we could go a little bit smaller just to get him to call those weaker pairs, make his range weaker overall, so that if we get another small card, or maybe if the board pairs, we might be able to generate another half pot bet size. What we don't want to have happen is we don't want to bet pot and then have him come over the top and push us in, because we're going to have to fold that. If we do half pot and he comes over the top, we're going to fold that. We're not going to have the odds. We're going to have to assume that he at least has a 9, and more than likely, if he comes in with a check raise, he's got most likely trips. Maybe 2 pair, but most likely trips. So I bet like 2/3 pot, which again, he folds, 47%, folds 45%. I expect him to call with a wide range, again, weak pair, middle pair, uh, hands, and he calls. So I'm at this point, I still think I'm ahead, and then the 8 of hearts comes, giving me trips. So the pot's 51. I've got 76.5 remaining. He checks, and I think he's going to check everything. And against that entire range, we are now at 75%. I think when we think about what hands hit, I think this is going to hit him with straights and sets. A 2 pair can now connect, but I don't. We hit trips. We hit trips. So his 2 pairs, 8-7. That's pretty unlikely. But his sets, we beat all of his sets except the 9. The one thing we can't do is a straight, and the straight's going to be 20.7%. So, what's our plan when he checks? I bet half pot. Uh, and I really don't like this half pot bet because I think he's going to bet. If we bet half pot, I think he's going to come over the top. And he should come over the top with his straight. And I would have expected him to raise with sets. Now, what sets is he gonna? I would have expected him to raise his sets with 7 5s. Basically, all of his sets. I would have expected him to raise on the turn, to check raise on the turn, or at least there's a definite possibility. So now, if he has a set now, I don't know if he's going to. I don't think he's aggressive enough to run a check raise with a set. Same thing, 2 pair, over pair. I don't think so. So, if we look at all of his hands, if I bet and get check raised, I think we're going to be behind the straight and we just have to fold. If I bet and he just calls, what hands is he going to call with? I think he's going to call with a set, 2 pair, over pair, probably call with the top pair, probably call, middle pair and the weak pair. I don't think I have anything with him. If he'd actually call with a weak pair or middle pair, after 3 streets of betting, he may just say, heck with it, I'm going to fold those. So against that calling range, yeah, we're still way ahead at 89%. But what percentage is that calling range? Well, that's 33% I think he calls versus 20% that I think he raises. I think checking is might seem weak, but based on this player, I just can't. Unless we think this player is going to call down lightly, call down with any pair, then I don't really like the bet. And when we look at his fold to river bet, it's 2 out of 2. So he's folding unless he has something. And we can look at his one money at showdown, 64%. So he's only calling if he thinks he actually has like completely good hands. So I think that argues that he is not going to be calling with any of the middle or the weak pair, which still has hands that he might call with. But again, I don't even think top pair is going to call. I think he would call the over pair, 2 pair, and sets. And what is this over pair? Jacks and tens. Would we have ever seen a raise at some point in the hand? I kind of think maybe. So I'm leaning more towards small chance that he actually has a hand that he's going to call with. He'll either just fold or raise. So I don't like the raise. I think we should have just checked here. He check raised, and now I hate fold trips, but I think we should fold trips here. It goes back to an idea that you never fold trips. Well, I think it's hard to beat. I bet he has a 6. I think he has the straight. Could have 10 jack. He could have called with gut shot. Over cards, who knows? I made the call, and I think this is wrong. And he shows pocket 6s, so he hit the straight. So when we look at this hand going through, we had 6s in his range the entire time. When we go through and look at, he called the flop with the 6s, any pair. He called the turn with the pair and the gut shot. And then if this 8 wasn't an 8, let's see, if we changed it and said, let's give it an ace of diamonds, I think we're still in a situation where we check. We check behind because he is, that ace is going to hit him. What about a king? I think a king's good. I think we may be able to bet. Although if we bet, I think he's going to fold. I think most players would fold. The player from the first hand would definitely call. Would call with any pair. What if it was a 2? I think a 2 works pretty good for us. But in this hand, how it played out, I think I should have just checked the river, saw the showdown with trips. Seems a little weak, but I can't rationalize him calling 3 streets with just a single pair, especially a pair that I can beat. So a single pair like 2 or a 5. All right, so this is hand number 2. Hope you enjoyed it. Look tomorrow for 2 more hands.